Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Nature Folklore Sessions. It's 29th of May 2022. Well, that's clever. Huh? Well, thank you for joining me for our weekly time of exploring nature-centered folklore, connecting this within your favorite sanctuary space, expressing your inspired visions from the sanctuary through your poetry, writing, arts, craft, performance, and problem solving. And you probably already noticed coming in now is our first guest, which is pretty exciting. And this is part 2 of our short 2-part Water Folklore series, Caring for Sacred Wells. And here's one there that's at Loch Crew that we talked about not so long ago. And special guests we've got today, they're going to be talking about their work and their passion for sacred and blessed holy wells and the restoration work they'll be doing. And that includes a well in Burton, England, northwest Chester, not far from the River Dee estuary. I'm going to be talking about that well as well. So we're not kind of exclusive to that. And that's the big one. Incredible pool that is. Anyway, horse already. Now, the guests today, as you can see to whichever side, of course, it's mirror image, isn't it? We've got Sarah Humble here. So we're guaranteed got Sarah Humble. And I see Gary's in the background there, which is great as well. I was going to show a Sarah Humble picture. Anyway, you see, just in case she wasn't here, there we go. I just love that photo, and I'm sure Sarah does as well. We've got Margaret Kiernan, who should be arriving soon, hasn't quite found here yet, but there she is, a picture of her. And she's going to be at the Shannon Pot with Bridget O'Brien, who's going to be on earlier. And there's Bridget also there with Sarah as well. So there we go. She's popping up everywhere. And they met up a couple of days ago at the St. Gula well near Tulsk and Roscommon. And as I was saying, Gary's in the background there, which is wonderful. And incredible resource on Facebook. I hope you're familiar with it, the Ancient and Holy Wells of Ireland. And also Susan Samuel was going to be with us live or on video, but unfortunately she's not able to do. She's not feeling quite well, but she sent me a lovely video of a well restoration project that I just mentioned in Burton in the Wirral that's up there. That's another lovely picture of it. It's a lovely community project, and it's not only the well, but it's the gardens they put around it, which is quite phenomenal. So she's there at the Wirral, which is the same place as where Cliff Carr, the singer that we have sometimes, where she is. And so I'm going to be talking about a bit about this well, showing them beautiful video. And we've also somewhere along the line, I've got a couple of flower poems talking of gardens from Eileen Monaghan, and that we haven't shown yet. So we've got a lovely show to get through, and somewhat at the mercy of mobile signals that some of our guests are using. So expect some spontaneous shifts around this afternoon, but thank you all for being with us. And before I get going, I better announce that this is the penultimate Nature Folklore session, and change of venue. Next Sunday is going to be the last one broadcasted from Carroll Crawley. It's next Sunday, 5th of June. Last broadcast here. A bit sad. But on the following week, we're doing a transition and going on the 28th of, let's see, I've got something I should be doing. I'll keep that one up. I'm going to be broadcasting from the Hive in Carrick-on-Shannon. That's going to be the studio. It's got excellent internet there. It's going to allow me to do a few extra things on the show that I can't do with what we've got here. I would have loved to have broadcast from our new home at Lichterdanum, but unfortunately the internet services there couldn't carry hosting a live broadcast. Not yet. It's coming, but not there yet. And as usual, these Nature Folklore Sessions videos and sanctuary support are brought to you due to the kind support of you wonderful subscribers through Patreon and through donations through Buy Me a Coffee and PayPal. And some subscribers on, even though we've got a beautiful day, and it's probably beautiful where you are, some subscribers are with us this afternoon. Of course, some of them are overseas and they're just getting out of bed and having their breakfast. So that's wonderful. Thank you for the continued support. Without it, I couldn't fund sharing this show with you, especially with the new expenses of renting space at the Hive to hopefully improve what we give to you. So everything is deeply appreciated, and the early birds will say hello to here. Shannon's on. Hello, Shannon, Michaela, Dory Smith, and yeah, you can. Your mic will work for you too, Sarah.
Oh, wonderful.
Let's see. I better start moving over. There we go. And Susan Samuel is here. I see here that we're going to be showing a video. Lovely to see you, Susan, here.
And there's Claire.
And Davina's here. And Claire Roach there. Wonderful to see you. And Sarah. Hello, Claire. Wonderful. Kenwood Sculptor Nash is another one on board from northern Michigan. And Shell Gooch is around. Lovely. Good day. Wonderful to see you, and wonderful that you've joined us as well. I think that we've got all our early birds on, which is incredible. Now, these nature folklore sessions, I'm often telling you the story of my first discovery of Ordnance Survey maps. And when I was as young as 6 years old, my biggest fascination was holy wells that were marked on these maps. And I've told stories about my Uncle Cecil, who cycled along with me. Well, I've given you the stories of what happened, why he cycled along with me, but I'm not going to repeat that one today. I'll keep it short as possible. But we went to look at the local wells. He was my guardian. He was also quite a diviner as well. And he loved going to these wells too, because he would pick up he would look around and try and find a hazel. And if not, willow would do. But I discovered the water in these pools and these wells were very much a magnetic attraction. Well, of course they were. I think every child is mesmerized by rock pools, aren't they? When you take a child down to the coast, they want to head off to the rock pools and see what's in them. It's not just see what fish is in them. It's the whole mesmeric, still water, the mesmerizing of it. And of course, I know as a child, and I know my children love to try and imitate that by making pools appear in the sand on the beaches for the same thing. So like as a child, like with many children, when I looked into water, my imagination was stirred up. It was charged up. It was enchanting. I was enchanted, and it set off dreams. And really, I don't think that experience ever leaves us. I think we'll always remain curious and trusting. But I believe the water is very soothing for us, isn't it? I had a soothing water one to go along with that one. There we go. And that's from the local well to here. Some people before the show were saying, where is it? Where is it? And I find if the water pools at Holy Wells are fresh and bright, like that one is, that is always bright, clear all year round. It can be very enchanting. Do you find this when you visit the blessed wells? Do you feel that they're drawing us in? This is a lovely one I love. It's so much like a dragon's head. That's a Tractor's Well near Monaster Aden. So you got a double, the sort of the guardian drawing you in. Not to harm us. Excuse me again. It seems as if they're there to show you something. The clearer the water, the more visions we seem to see. And sometimes there's water bubbling up. Oh, I got the water. Fantastic. And the water is bubbling up deep from below the earth. And that can really charge up the imagination even more, and especially into stories. But of course, sometimes we have sluggish wells as well. We go to them. They seem a bit sluggish and murky because other life has joined in, such as ferns, water plants, algae. Sometimes trees are growing from within the well. But I find this is all hugely fascinating, and it always fills us with endless wonder. Now, I'm babbling on a bit. Maybe I'm bubbling on. And I think our reaction and draw to holy wells and waters is really beyond the words of our languages, our limited languages that we got. But I suppose to sum it up, we can feel blessings, we can feel safe, and we can feel sanctuary. Anyway, we'll go to first guest, so who's here, who's sort of got lots of places to visit, so it's absolutely wonderful. Again, I think we've got Mike in position, and I'll try not to take over the screen. I noticed where the video, there's me with a great head forwards, and there's poor Sarah. She's all stuck as the little elf in the background. Anyway, lovely that you could visit again. Sarah Humble, I'm sure. Off of the show, you come up in just about, and when we talk wells, it's almost as if they're not sacred wells, they're Sarah wells in a way.
I know we can't take claim of wells.
I know you wouldn't want to do that whatsoever, but it's the way that people vision. It's amazing how people look to guidance, I think, when we're approaching a well. And one of the things that Gary's going to be talking about, which is going to be quite interesting. I'll leave that a bit later, but it's going to sort of bounce off a bit of what we're going to be talking about, I think. But with you, it's where to start. The last location, and we were talking about that last week, was I always get them mixed up. It is Clare, and there's St. Bridget's Well, Clare.
It's Clare, St. Bridget's Well in Clare.
I always say it's Clane or Clare. I always get one of the letters wrong. Clare, that you were, and the photo that I haven't got it handy, I don't think at the moment. It seemed to be there was a lot of dead hawthorn. That was the basis of the fire, was it?
I'm sure that all the fire that was built on the hill of Ishnock came out of the last 2 years of stormfell, which I thought was kind of poetic, to lay certain things to end. So this year we had the opportunity, the blessed opportunity, to bring a bit of balance to the fire with Ishnock. So we arrived about 2 weeks before, and Bridget O'Brien and Claire Kelly, who often come and help, down at St. Bridget's Well in Clare, were there, and we repainted, we took out brambles, we reclaimed land. There's actually a church down in Clare, and the story that I heard and was told that the translator had actually got Kildare wrong, and Bridget's flame was kept up in Ishnock at this wee church. So I don't know how much true it is, and I don't want to start cross-county wars or whatnot, but I thought it was a really interesting kind of side note that perhaps that the eternal flame had been kept there. Maybe it was kept in many, many different places. But over the 2 weeks, I communed in with Simon Taylor, who usually builds the fire at Ishnock, and back and forth, dragging litres upon litres of water, which just got better and better the more the community was coming in and cleaning. And then I sat with Patsy Preston and sewed until my fingers bled, but that was no harm, because sure, Jesus, moving around brambles and, trimming out trees is hard physical work. So there was a nice bit of balance in the workflow. So it took about 2 weeks to get that well clean and right. And then we were given a place to open up sound space with the knowledge of all the water that we had been bringing right next to the fire. And it was really so beautiful to be that water aspect, welcoming in this beautiful creative vision that Patsy had of inviting the gods and the goddesses from around the land. Now, unfortunately, she could only choose 8. But Manna MacLear was in attendance. There was representations from every. Sean Fitzgerald, he was Meath. The provinces, the different sacred centres were recognised, and they were done in such a rainbow format. And then they came to single file and passed by the water first, and then in and around the fire, and became a rainbow. And I think showings of a careship in such ways to our tradition, to our heritage, amazing. To me, the heart centre of Ireland is the heart centre of the world. And, when I was confronted with this church being overcome with brambles, I had this thought that we as a people throughout the world have thorns inside our heart that prick at us and tear us apart. And it was my prayer that, as we roll these brambles, and I'm becoming very good at removal of brambles and reclamation of land, because, oh my God, the soil in underneath them are ripe for the planting, aren't they? They're absolutely beautiful under bramble bushes. So we rolled it up, and the sheep had been getting in. We had got on a carpet and made a sofa, getting ready to prepare people to be able to come to the hill, because it's such a busy time on the hill of Ishnok. There's no space for people just to come in and tune in and visit in the lead up for it. But I feel that these well spaces were these places where people could just go and sit and center themselves before they go up into such fiery community sort of energy. So it was really nice prepping that well, knowing so many people would come through that space and feel that warm welcome home. Back to the heart space. So the sheep had found their way into the well, and they ate the heads off all the flowers that we had spent hundreds of euros planting and buying, and they came from all over the island. So we rolled up the brambles and we made outward fences using the brambles to keep the sheep out. And I thought how poetic that is, that we're taking the thorns that are pricking people's heart centers and using them as a form of protection rather than a form of damage.
Ah, goodness.
That was quite a gush. Sorry about that.
Oh, no, that was fantastic. I was sort of there was part of me wishing that we had photos, but you beautifully described, and I think anybody listening to that didn't need the photos. The imagination was there. But then, as we were saying, you stared into so many wells. This is a whole natural.
This is a whole natural process.
So, but you were saying in the comparison of Kildare to Kildare, it's fascinating. There are these sort of set stories, but when wandering around, I love to pick up stories from people present if I can sort of get them comfortable in that. And it was at the Tully Well, not the Wayside Well. But someone was talking about the story, and there was actually a traveller there and said, "Oh, that's not the way we've heard it." And they said, she didn't have to build a monastery; it was already there. And so it's one that I tell on that there was a woman who managed to. She was a kind of a servant to the chieftain. What do they call them? Bondswoman, where they're bonded, they're sent by another chieftain, the sort of ownership of a woman. But the chieftain knew of her passion for wanting to be of a place of scribing. And that's the way they looked at it, because chieftains at that time could see that there was this new scribing industry is going to start, almost like the startup when there was Microsoft and so forth, and said, "Oh, do you think you can handle this?" But of course, men have to be the scribes. And he was saying that because the tradition was saying she set up in Kildare, set up the scribing, but it was the men that wrote the poetry that scribed it down. Anyway, I thought, it was a very sort of practical thing from saying that. But going to, say, Crawn in Offaly, you go there and the local people say, "Oh, no, this was where Bridget was born." Right. And then I suddenly realized, thinking of my time living in the Hebrides, because you've got so many people who've got the same names. You don't call them by names. You call Mary Mackay, you might as well be talking to the whole village. So everyone is kind of known for what they do and where they live. And the idea of the flash of lightning and the bringer of fire, the eternal flame. I always think, well, there was probably, there wasn't just one Bridget of Kildare. There was all these various bridges. So probably Crom may well have had their own. It was a name of a title of a position, because there wasn't name registration. You didn't keep your name for life. And this is something I've been saying about wells as well, that people say, "Oh, this is a Bridget well. Oh, this is a Patrick's well." And I say, really, this well is what it means to you, because there's no official, well, there is now with OPW and that, but really aesthetically, there isn't actually a name. Just because some clown came along a couple of thousand years ago and ordained it. What about the thousands of years before? What were people calling it then?
Well, I've come to a lot of peace in traveling around the country and all these different wells. I feel that the different saints attributed to the different wells tell the mineral composition of the water. They can give indicatory towards what the water content is. So, like, when I come across, now God forgive me, what is her name? She's the patron saint of mental illness anyhow, and her name will come to me eventually. But, you know, I feel that when you come across one of her wells, that it might have a high content of lithium within it, similar to Tubbin and Alt.
Yeah.
And, you know, maybe it wasn't just a random, just land tagging, well grabbing type thing. It gave people a sense of where to go, you know, like a lot of the eye wells. Saint Darbla, she's got a well up in Balmullet, and the story goes that she was such a beautiful woman that she had many suitors, and one was extra keen, and she lifted her skirts, and she was trying to run away because she just wanted a holy life. Like most of us girls do. You know, and she goes all the way up to Balmullet, and the suitor, in his keenness, he arrives up there, and she's frustrated. She says, what is it that you love so much about me? He says, your eyes. I love your eyes. She says, well, take them, and tears them out of her head, casts them down onto the ground, and instantly a well sprung up. St. Arbla's well in Balmullet as a cure for the eyes. So our folklore and the names that are attached to these wells are really good indicators of how we can start perceiving them as the keys to health.
I love that. This is where I like the folklore, because I think the folklore has a much more beautiful way of explaining things above the science, because the healing wells, and it was something I might talk a bit about, is there is actual science behind it, because when the water goes down deep, there's less oxygen, the water's not absorbing the oxygen, it becomes more ionic. The more ionic it becomes, any minerals in the rocks attach to the water much easier, just like when we dissolve things. So once they come out of the well, they've got all these minerals chelated, clinging to it, that when we drink it will absorb into us rather than taking a supplement.
Absolutely.
And you know, so, but that's such a boring way. The idea of the woman and them tearing the eyes out, that really, you know, a person's going to remember that well is great for the eyes. If I started talking about the geology that mixed up with the water, you know, that's just big pharma, you know.
It's how you tell the story, John.
It is, and that's why I love, and that's why I see the main purpose of folklore. You know, it's not just fairy stories. Yeah, they are fairy stories. They're entertaining, but how powerful they are on our memory and remembering things, and our lifestyle and how we do things. That's why I love that. And I think that's pretty much the theme from the visions that I try and encourage on the show anyway. So after Kildare, after Ushnik, where else have you ventured?
Oh, by Jesus. After Ushnik, well, I met water protectors in and along one of the rivers, actually at Bridget's well, because I was there for about a week and afterwards, because sure, the well needed just a wee tidy. Most people were respectful, but it's good to close what you start. And then I bounced up to the Strew wells up in County Down. Oh my God, boy. How glorious are they? So I hung out there for a couple of days. The Northern Ireland communities are sending boys in to do the stone work and tidy up in and around the area. So they're re-rendering all the old stone walls and putting in preservation. Unfortunately, the wells are locked due to some Amadon that came down with their paintbrushes and their paint bits and started washing the paintbrushes inside the wells. So this is the proper education in and around these spaces is becoming more and more pivotally important, of how to behave in these spaces and how water is so precious. Sure, I came to St. Agla's well, where I met Bridget O'Brien. I had no intention of coming in there, and I'm traveling up and I'm passing through Rackrohan, and I says, "Oh, I'm just down the road, so I'll just pop in." And there's Bridget O'Brien. She says, "I'm just here to clear the well," and sure enough, the whole community in and around had been. The rural community scheme have been clearing it with the help of the local priest. So they've been taking down all the scrubs and whatnot and helping clean it. Now there's more springs than you can count in that well. But unfortunately, they've had to put gates up due to the local farmers coming to wash their slurry tanks inside the wells, without even the proper regard that Glan Agla take the water source for that whole community in out of that area. Now they do put them through their treatment plants, but they have really beautiful science that they're starting to apply to it. And they were telling me that you can access it now. God forgive me, in my memory, there's too much in my brain. There are ways of accessing it. So once I find it, I'll put it on the All Is Well page, and hopefully that we can start actually forming strategized plans for communities to be able to take it into proper careship of these spaces without having to lock them up. Because one Amadon means that the rest of the community is not getting access to these spaces. And that's very unfortunate as far as I'm concerned. So when I meet other water workers in on their flow, like I did Bridget O'Brien, and I have so much regard for Garrod, it's there.
Yeah, we're going to have to bring him on in a minute.
So I'm going to stop talking. And how about you introduce your next guest?
Yeah, I could have you on forever, but it's catching up.
Forever is a long time.
The dog. There's the dog. A question on the dog on the shoulder. Davina is saying about the dog on the shoulder.
Super glue.
And perhaps you have to move this way a bit, and we'll get dog. There we go. Yeah, introduce the dog. That's fantastic. Davina wants to go back to Ireland, and Shell's here as well. It's fantastic. Right, there's a bit of chat about North Carolina going on there, and I know that we got Gary here, and I think Gary's got. He's doing stuff with the family. Let's get him up while we've got a chance. Hello, Gary. I better get the earphones on, otherwise we won't hear you. I forget.
Hi, John.
There we go.
Hi, Sarah.
Serious headphones, professional here. There we go. Right, and I was thinking, how can I hear Gary? There we go. Right, good afternoon, Gary.
Hi, John. How are you? Can you hear me?
Fantastic.
Brilliant.
It's wonderful. It's great and very unusual to get both you and Sarah on at the same time, which is
Thanks for asking me to come on, John. I'm delighted to be here.
That's fabulous. I'll bring you and Sarah. That's odd.
I'm having to lip read him.
Yeah, really. I suppose it's because it's half and I'm on the wrong side.
No, you be.
Anyway, Gary. And we're going to be talking about the fancy going round to the wells and kind of bring them back to the people, getting the local people involved. And of course, Sarah's well known for that, is inspiring the community to get going.
Yeah.
I had a situation in Darien Woods where there was a hidden well. And when we were doing Baths in the Woods, we were uncovering it. We found some steps. We found a place to put your feet in. And then along comes the archaeologist and says, what you're doing is totally illegal. And I got all the bump about OPW. And I said, well, would OPW even know it's here? And would they even deal with it? And he said, probably not. And I said, wouldn't it be nice if... we could have this going. We're not going to move stones or anything. And it was funny, the archaeologist's son was helping us clean up whilst he was arguing with it. So that was fantastic. But from what you were saying, Gary, you were going to talk to us a bit about the legalities to look out for possibly during our enthusiasm for the wells.
Yeah, I thought it would be a good topic to talk about. Obviously, as part of the whole caring for water, caring for wells, I thought it would be a good topic to talk about what we are and what we aren't allowed to do. It's a little bit of a minefield because everybody kind of has their own opinion as to what should be done and what shouldn't be done and how the system is kind of working in practice. So, are you happy for me to start or...
I suddenly realized Sarah can't hear a word you're saying, so we're sharing earpieces here.
Oh, okay. No bother, Sarah. I thought the way you told the story at Derval's Well was fantastic. Thanks a million for that. Thought that was brilliant.
I know, Ray.
Okay, so I'll try not to make it too heavy. A bit of it is quite dry, but it is what it is. So. I suppose to start, I had a little look. If anybody wants to have a look at the archaeology.ie website, it's quite good. I've taken a lot of my stuff from that. It's the website for the National Monument Service. So the definition there, responsibility for the protection of national monuments ultimately rests with a Minister for Housing and Local Government and Heritage, or a local authority. So he or she relies on the National Monument Service to keep the records up to date and be a point of contact. And also you have the OPW in there that does some of the work on the ground. The National Monuments Act, the Amendment Act 1987. I put a link to that on YouTube. I actually don't have access to Facebook on my computer here, so I don't know if they map over, or John, if you can maybe copy.
No, I just get the comments feeded from everywhere. But everything stays separate.
Oh, right. Okay. Well, if anyone wants to have a look on YouTube, you'll see the link on the comments there. As I said, it's a little bit dry, so if you're having trouble to sleep, that's probably your go-to place. So under the National Monuments Act, a monument is any historic monument entered into the register, which include prehistoric monuments, any monuments associated with commercial, cultural, economic, industrial, military, religious, or social history, and anything that exists before 1700. So covers pretty much everything. There's 4 different types of protected monument. There's those recorded in the records of monuments and places. So I'm going to put a link up to that if I can, on YouTube, if anybody wants to check that. The Register of Historic Monuments, if it's subject to a preservation order, or if it's in the ownership or guardianship of the minister. If anybody is looking to carry out any work at a monument or near the monument, they have to give the minister 2 months' notice before commencing that work.
Oh, goodness.
Exactly.
That's knowing who the minister is. Oh, goodness.
Yeah, so that's what it says now. Obviously, holy wells are a little bit they're very different from other kind of national monuments. So if you were to look at something like a portal tomb or a dolmen or something like that, again, I'm sure people would have different opinions on that, but if it's made of stone, it's kind of there. But a holy well is really a living thing. So I always say that the structure kind of comes second to the water.
Exactly.
So sometimes you have holy wells that are protected, that are dry, which I think is kind of pointless. You've got the source of wells, which the water might rise somewhere else. And if somebody else is doing work, land drainage or whatever, in a lot of cases, there's nothing stopping them doing that. The rules seem to be geared around the built structure, which was built to protect the water, but the water itself isn't protected, which is, again, I think it's a bit pointless. So I think if we don't look after the wells, and when I say look after them, it would be kind of clearing water channels, cleaning out watercress, mud, kind of clearing pathways so people can get to the wells. If we don't do that, the spring might shift, might end up going somewhere else.
It's funny, the first thing that comes to mind when you're saying that is up in the top of Slieve League there. And there's 3 holy wells right at the top on the cliffs.
Yeah.
And with 2 of them, that's exactly what's happened is they've shifted and they're bubbling up in the grass. And the stone structures are way behind them, bone dry. So I often wonder now what are people going to do with this, where the new spring is, because that's decided where it's going to be.
Well, I
yeah,
think
exactly. You have the stories in the past, in the folklore about people offending the well and it moves from place X to place Y. But people at that time kind of recognized that wells could move, and the well was just seen to have been relocated. Whereas now the rules seem to be more geared towards the building around the well, and no thought is given to the actual well itself that is alive and it can move. So that's probably something that should be looked at. I know it's something I've always said for years. There's a well, John, I know you know fairly well up in Tala, St. Cullum Kills well.
Yeah.
It's where we've had the Bards in the Woods, the picnic there.
In 3 degrees, yes,
3
brilliant.
degrees, yeah. But I know it was a lovely day, but yeah, absolutely, it was fairly cold. But the housing that kind of started in Tala many years ago is slowly creeping up to the well. Now, last time I was there last year, and the land that's behind the well, there's a stone cross in that field. That's for sale, and there was planning permission for houses there. My only concern is that the spring for that well rises in the field behind it. So there's obviously a risk there, but there's nothing stopping them cutting off that source. Obviously, they're going to put drainage and sewerage in along with the houses. So there's a real risk now that there could be a damage to the spring there, which is a concern. Yeah. So
What
that's one of my
what can be
big
done?
I know I put a submission in. I don't know if it was a submission or an observation back then, just so they were aware of it. And in saying that, to be honest, Sarah, I haven't been up there since last year, so the houses could be built now. I don't really know. It's probably a good excuse to make the trip up there and have a look. So I might do that actually in the next few days. Now that you've reminded me of it. But yeah.
Because I really feel that if communities are caring for these spaces, these things are less likely to happen. And because there doesn't seem to be any legal repercussions. Like I was down in Kildare, and there's a well down the road from the Hill of Allen, which has the atrocity of being a mined away, with the community getting no headway in being able to change that. But when I was down the well, we were down there, I thought it was dry. I touched it and I went, oh, there's water under here. And I just started pulling, and no intention or anything. We ended up with a ton of stone taken out of the well. Yeah. And then I realized that when they had built the road, they had just backfilled the outlet channel of the well, and the water was stagnating. And their solution, rather than to clear the channel, was to fill in the well. Yeah. And these are governmental bodies that are doing this on behalf. And if an average person was to do anything to mess with these wells, there could be serious repercussions. But there seems to be this lapse in building properties and houses. Like Bridget's well in Kildare was going to be a housing estate, and luckily the community stood up and says, no, you cannot put that here.
Yeah. The one in Kildare, actually, the last time I was there, so there's actually 3 wells there. So you've the Bridget's well, and then there's the other 2. And
they're and there's one other, which is on the spot. Brains like civets, we're grand.
Exactly, yeah. But they're located in pump houses, but they're still there. I don't think they're actually being used. I don't think the water's being used for anything, because the land is kind of so boggy around there.
I think those wells are actually piped into local houses in and around. But right. I was wondering, do you know anything about the Adopt a Monument scheme?
I remember there was a lot of kind of advertisement about it when it came out first, but I haven't really heard much about it since. So I don't really know. I think I looked it up at the time, but I can't really remember, to be honest.
Because I had been talking to a fella in the Shadow of Ishnok who has just they've restored their church and their holy well on the Adopt a Monument scheme. So this might be a way of potentially communities being able to fundraise, it would be beautiful to see all 3 wells of Kildare restored back to their glory. And also there is a serious need for a boardwalk in and along that road because it's so dangerous.
Oh, it is. Yeah. No, I park at there's 2 gates down the road from it. And I normally park there and walk down, but it's really, really dangerous. Yeah, I
It's
agree.
very, very dangerous. So there seems to be public access. Now, it does get a little bit boggy. You know, there's plans to make it a little bit more palatable for the walkway. But across from Ishnuck is that gate with the hawthorn. And you can walk the road in along that way safely. Just
now,
to
the
let people know.
one thing is, it's an incredible debate, but I love what's bringing this in. This is all about caring for wells and caring for access and so forth. But I definitely want to make the plug because we've got a very unique position at the moment. There we have with Gary there with the Ancient Wells of Ireland, and we've got Sarah Humble here of All Is Well, and to have the 2 of you together in chat is quite a remarkable thing. So it's lovely to have the 2 of you, and it's as if we really need an overtime one for the conversation because, you know, you are the 2 sort of people we all go to, you know, where have they been? What sites are they working on? What sites are they visiting? And you're the 2 people, certainly in Ireland, visitors to Ireland, that people look up to. So if anybody's got any questions quickly for Gary and Sarah before we say bye-bye to them, quickly get your questions up about the Wells of Ireland.
Can I just actually make a point there, John? Sarah, you were just saying about, you know, the government bodies that were filling in wells and all that kind of stuff. On the National Monument Service website, there's actually a code of practice for each of the government bodies, which is very interesting, that they've all signed up to. So it's probably something if you've come across an issue, where, for example, I know Borden and Mona or the ESB or the Gas Board, they've signed up to a thing saying they will and will not do certain things. And I'm sure filling in holy wells is something that they said they will not do. So it's maybe just have a look. Yeah, what I'll do is I'll actually when I get back onto Facebook on my phone, I'll put up a couple of links in the comments here, just if people want to have a look. Yeah.
Wonderful,
okay.
Thank you.
Okay.
Interestingly, just one more thing. Donegal County Council has just unanimously voted in rights for nature within their planning applications. I feel that this could possibly be very, very important in us bringing forward the preservations of the well and the waters, is if we could actually get rights for nature written into our constitution. So I'll just leave that wee nugget with you. And if there's anybody else that wants to comment on that, we are totally open for discussions because it needs to be a plan that's formulated between many great minds. Yeah. So down by the Dagdar soon and we'll have another cup of tea, yeah?
I hear you. Sounds good.
It was lovely to have the 2 of you together for a few minutes there. Thank you for coming on live in the end, Gary. That was fabulous. That was better than a video. So thanks very much. We'll see you again. Thank you, Gary there. Thank you. It was absolutely brilliant there. And we've still got Sarah here. Oh, goodness. None of the others have come on live yet. So there's supposed to be a couple more people coming on, but we'll see.
Well, I do believe Bridget's up in the Shannon pot at the moment.
Yeah, she's trying to get through. She was trying to get through to me earlier, and I was still on the road and still driving away there. And
hey, John, we get to chat anyhow.
We do, and I get to let's get to where I was in the photos because I was talking about me as a 6-year-old child being totally entranced by staring into pools of water, and. Okay, 6-year-old children now. How long will they do that before reaching out for mummy and daddy's phone? Anyway, my Uncle Cecil, as I say, was with me. He'd be hunting around with his forked twigs and, as I say, trying to find a hazel. Hazel was his preference because of the association with hazel and water, which I would love to talk to you about a little bit later. There we go. There's a nice bit of hazel and the hazelnuts there. I love it so much. as well, the hazel. And today we approach both wells and the trees beside the wells. And today we're familiar with the trees covered with cluties, with rags. And the tree species we're familiar with probably by wells is mainly hawthorns. Sometimes the nearby tree is a birch, holly, ash, such as we got a mature ash at a local well here. But rarely do I see hazel by wells these days. But during my younger years, I heard that once upon a time, hazel trees were the most common trees by sacred wells. And here's one here that's by a well, a beautiful one there. And those of you familiar with me and these sessions will pick up that moving into a transition of talking about water into talking about hazels a bit. And I love the story I picked up first from Scotland. And it was actually a Donegal man called Charlie McGee that I worked with on Iona. And you may have heard me tell the story of the goddess, the kayak, in a boat, and how, with the help of otters in the sea, she built the land of Earth. Now, this Scottish story is kind of related to that, but this is about a goddess that actually came out of the sea. She came onto the shore, and she was in the form of a hazel tree. And this is an actual tree. I think that really depicts very much a goddess, hazel tree. Fantastic. And each of her trunks were filled with serpents. And here's an artist's impression of that in a way. And she climbed the hills, she climbed up the mountains, and she got to where there were swallow holes. If you go up these limestone hills around here, you'll soon come across swallow holes, especially if you go up to Carrickeel and go over the fences, you'll see them. And swallow holes, they're very common, as I say, in limestone. And they're holes that are formed by water, of course, and they can go very deep into the mountain. They go way down, and there's one that's not too far away from here. And sometimes they'll go down to a loch that's in the middle. There's a lot of stories of hidden lochs and magical lochs. The great conception happens at midwinter. And sometimes these holes, they'll go way down to the earth, and the rainwater on the hills, it collects up and it all falls down the swallow holes, and the pressure goes more and more, and as it travels underground, it pushes away, and it pushes underground, and up comes the water, eventually the springs, and there we got the blessed well. And I talked about the science of the ionic as well, and the chelating. But with this kayak story, the kayak in the form of the hazel tree, she stretched over the swallow holes, strides her roots, and peed down the swallow holes, and she still had plenty of water within her. And also serpents that were living in her legs, and she's got these roots in the wells, they would drop down the swallow holes as well. And they wiggled along and swiggled. They came out the caves at the bottom. And from those squiggling from the serpents, that's one of the stories of how the rivers formed. And even the Loch Ness Monster is related to that story as well. And it was the flow of these serpents that decided where the rivers would flow, where the water would flow. So that's how in Scotland the waters were created as they flow through the land, and then from that formed mist and the rain. Then the rain would go down the swallow holes again, and there you got a repeated cycle. Anyway, Sarah told me a few days ago that she and another well supporter, they were working on clearing St. Patrick's Well. And the eel wriggle, the eel was wriggling in your hand.
Oh, yeah, that was down by the
she was first thing she said, oh, Patrick hadn't got rid of all of them. But then I wondered if, to me, the first reaction was not Patrick, and I wondered if it was one of the leftovers serpents from the Scottish kayak. Over here we have the Dagdar, the stories of Dagdar in Scotland. The kayak there is the Doida, and there's a servant of Doida, a bit like the mating of the Morrigan and Doida Dagdar here. They have a mating there, the Berg, on the Isle of Mull, very similar. And she's one that's responsible for the Serpent. So I thought of the kayak Serpents, and you thought, Patrick had got rid of the thing. It was great. Anyway, the roots from the fallen goddess after being down the swallow holes. Yes. We've that's it. This is what I was going to introduce Sarah. Can you tell us a bit more of that eel story in your words? I'd love to hear that.
So I just been over in London, and London is a very, very stark difference of reality to the Garden of Eden that we've got here. And I sat for a couple of days with the Thames. And interestingly, all the water tablets in on it have warrior. But by the end of the couple of days, I felt this indignation and this rage rise up inside my soul. By the time I got back onto this island, I was so relieved to see the softness of the water that was echoing upon all of everything. The trees reflected the water rather than this harsh concrete. And I was so relieved in my heart that we still have such an opportunity to be able to care for these spaces. So I end up in the Slane Castle, and I'm down in alongside the River Boyne, and we've spoken before about the plight of the River Boyne. And I began to clean the wells as they were going, and there were 3 to them. And it's absolutely beautiful. One of them is piped in directly into the Boyne. So I think that would have been that connection point. And as I was cleaning out the silt and the muck, out came a baby eel. I looked up until Slane Hill, because that's where Patrick declared war in and on top of all of our way of being. And I says, aye, Paddy, you have driven most of the snakes out of Ireland, but you did forget the water snakes. We cleaned out that well and we moved up to the second one, which is fed by the spring, which is again further in up the hill. And when all this water was clear and it was pumping firmly in out onto the River Boyne, I hung off that beautiful hazel tree that echoes in over the Boyne, and I allowed all that rage to echo into Boann. Because it is time for us to preserve our waters. It is time for us to see that we have the Garden of Eden, and it is not much for longer unless we each stand up and take accountability and responsibility for keeping these places pure in the absolute sanctity that our grandchildren's can too enjoy these spaces. Yeah. So that was the scale.
That was lovely. And there's and as Davina was saying, she's a poet indeed. It's a real big bonus hearing Sarah tell the story. All that. That's it. And Davina, yes, it's brilliant. Meanwhile, Gary did. He's got put a link in that's handy for you. And yes, lovely to have the 2 of you again. Claire, who knows about the well I was talking about in Darien Woods, sand by the archaeologist. And anyway, she's saluting Sarah and Gary there as well. Yes, I'll talk to you about that later. You probably wasn't there on that day. Yes, there was a bit of going on anyway. But to sort of move on, because there's a couple of videos I want to share with you as well that were sent in. But I'm thinking of the Yggdrasil. It's something you're familiar with, the Yggdrasil mythology, Norse mythology. And there's amazingly well interpretations that come from this. I haven't missed out. I'm just checking your comments here. And Claire is saying about the etiquette and passion of all there. Brilliant, brilliant. And a lot of people think of Yggdrasil, the tree of life, being an oak because of the size and the sturdiness. And certainly people will look at the oak as a symbol of justice and balance. And sometimes people say, well, the tree of life, it's the ash. And sometimes the apple, and that's both understandable. But I love the idea of the hazel, of course, being the tree of life, tree of water. And it's strange, when we think of trees of water, we might think of willow, ash, alder, especially here when it was boggy. But thinking of the hazel of water, and I said about the kayak as well with the 3 trunks. Let's see if I got another kayak one. I think I've got something here. Oh, I love this one. Yeah, this is an artist's impression of her coming out of the water. I think that's brilliant, and pissing down these swallow holes from there. And other hazel stories I tell on nature folklore sessions, mainly at the one time. But sometimes I talk about the Morna Coracuen and the womb and the center of the hill of Caiche here, and about the loch in the middle, and how that's full of water. It's not that story is not in medieval books at all. It's not medievally described, but it's one I've heard through my family, through other storytellers, and whether it's authentic or not, I love the symbolism and imagination that stirs of the story of the Morna Coracuen's mountain or earth womb, and the stories of her pouring. I just love the symbol of pouring. That's an Aquarius pouring, but the idea of pouring water of life flowing through the underground, through the underworld. And this could be long distance. And then, as we say, the pressure pushes up. And then we have our sacred now spring well. And again, I show the local one here, something like that, which is bubbles away and stays clean all year round. But to me, I imagine each sacred well being umbilically connected to the hidden kayak in that mountain pool, pure water and full of chelated minerals due to the lack of oxygen. And indeed, they're healing waters, as we know, because of the folklore, as we're told, which we memorize, and the chelated minerals get absorbed with us. Much better for you than the supplements. Now, the amazing gift these sacred, just think of the amazing sacred gift these wells were to ancient people before there were any saints, Christian saints. Ancient communities seem to have grown up around these sacred wells. It was their water supplies. And sometimes I think some of the battles were over water rights, not anything else. But going back to the hazel goddess Clarke, I spoke of her coming out of the sea. I'm sorry, it's a bit of a vague story reflecting on the variations of the story that's been told to me. But one of those from Erigale, from Argyll, she had three main routes, and instead of going up the mountain searching for swallow holes, each of the routes stood in three sacred wells. Again, we're linking up with Norse mythology here. And in the Scottish version, the water on earth was already established and it was flowing. And it didn't need snakes gushing from her roots to do the job of making the waterways and the rivers. But one of these three wells was actually a serpent's well. And although the person who told me the story the first time I heard of this called it a dragon's well, and any regulars here will know that when we're talking about dragons, I tend to speak of serpents rather than dragons. But I'm usually talking about the lore of tales of a trinity of the passing, transformation, and rebirth, especially of a Sawan, maybe in Yule, maybe at Imbolg. So those are the three transitions, Sawan, Yule, and Imbolg, where we have the transformation, passing, and into rebirth the following spring. Anyway, one of the roots of the Serpent's Well was also the fluctor, and that's my artist's impression of it, the fire in the water. And I explained fluctor more during the winter nature folklore sessions. But the second route, and this is something you'll probably be more familiar with, is Mima's Well as an artist's impression. And a lot of people seem to know about this one. And from Mima's Well, it's told that life is shared with us through a sequence of vision thoughts. And it's these visions that bring us enlightenment and expand our wisdom. Going back, we simplify that when we're talking about gazing in balls, aren't we? And it's a sort of variation in a way on the salmon of wisdom stories and the symbols that come with that. So Mima's Well, I think some of you have got your own stories around this. And your own stories are probably very much in association with Odin, who's told of being frustrated, not having the wisdom and knowledge of the world. And he begged the goddess, his wife Frigg, to give him that vision and wisdom that she had. So the story tells of how Odin donated an eye to Frigg, very similar to what Sarah was talking earlier. There's Irish versions with different characters, different settings. But anyway, Frigg asked, well, I've given you an eye to Frigg. Can we exchange? Can you give me better vision in the other eye and into the inner eye as well? And there's a lot of folklore scholars who believe Frigg and Freya are the same. I've had a few debates on that one myself. But Mima's Well is closely associated with the tradition I tell of that woman around of what women do around Imbolc, or more these days, the few that do it around May Day's Eve, and that is staring into the well to get a vision of the mate they're about to meet, a mate with Beldner. Do you want to say some words on that, Sarah? No, we better not get personal. It's nothing to do with me. I'm not in this one. The third route. Anyway, I better move on.
Well,
You better say something. I let the cat out of the bag there, didn't I?
No, not at all. But you know, the gazing into the wells. I've been reading a lot about it. In and around May time is a way of scrying for your one true love. So more on that later.
Right, follow. You'll have to follow Sarah's blog for any further updates on that one. But anyway, it was amazing.
But thank you for that story of the Cailleach. I had not heard of her shedding her waters to become the snakes that form the channels. John,
yeah,
what a beautiful story. I'll take that.
There's a lot of variations because we have it from the Cage Hill here.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, we have it from Ushnik, which I'm going to be talking about in a minute, where the 12 rivers went from.
Oh, please carry on.
Anyway, the third route on this one, the Scottish one, was placed in the Well of Erd. Another one you're perhaps familiar with. Have I got a picture to go on Erd here? The Well of Erd. Now, this is something you might well be, because we're going back to the three hags stories by the well, which most of you that are into this folklore will be familiar with as well. So the Well of Erd, the three hags associated again with fire, water, and the rock of the earth. And you might have heard me on Nature Folklore tell about this associated with that beautiful well that's near us that tends to have that similar story, a Dagdar story, in fact. Anyway, a very common story is told that these three hags, being the hags of the Morrigan, or as I say, the Morna Coracuen, but this three hag story pops up in folklore as mythology all around the world. It's amazing. It's in Norse mythology abundantly, and there in the Norse mythology, they are the three hags of the past, present, and future. I'm trying to get a Heidi on that one because something I want to show. No, it won't. There we go. And I see these three roots of the Kayak Hazel goddess as being the Fluxa Well of birth, Mimma's Well of the living and the growing, and the three hag Well of Erd being more suited to Samhain tales of the harvest, the transition of the waste from the harvest, and how that's quietly weaved through winter. And of course, the way I think of Samhain being the start of the time of the recycling of the debris and weaving, thinking of Samhain as being when the harvest is now all done, the last harvest is in, and the biodiversity process is now happening, the reweaving of the corpse debris, the straw, the hay, the leaf shedding. And the Well of Erd may, thinking of that, it may even be retitled as the Well of Turd, but I'll move on from that. We've had Gary, and this is why I was going to have Gary anyway. But we're going to show you a photo because of... I love the idea of trees beside wells. I think you put this one up, didn't you?
Oh yeah, I think that is actually Amanda Clarke. She was doing a gathering there at that well. I love the work of Amanda Clarke. She's a woman after my own heart. She's documented all the wells in Cork and is on her way into Kerry and is now starting to host wee gatherings in and around and sharing her deep knowledge that she's got. And so, mahu, Amanda. But this is one of her ones, and I can't remember which one. Do you have a name for it? There's so many.
No, and I did. I looked it up. I totally forgotten what it is.
Well, Amanda, if you're watching, please put up the name of it and the link to your wee gathering that you had. Please.
It's supposed to be a secret gathering, but a lot of people have given a name to that well. I mean, it's a very well populated, visited well. But I love the way that he's saying it's to include the mystical methods of processing trauma and conflict and using art, which is, again, it goes back to the core of having your sanctuary for that. And I'm sort of homing in on
And these places are places to process emotion. I would just had visual anthropologists travel a week with me through the country, and I was bringing her through the different wells, and our thesis was based on how death interrelated in with the holy wells. So we began to really explore how these spaces, you spoke about the mineral compositions, but it's also the molecular structures of these waters. Give your waters inside of you that when they're in turmoil and turbulence, the codings to be well. And they do exactly what they say upon the tin. So, if you need to be well, you go and sit beside a well. So I don't see any other better place for being able to transmute and change what trauma and conflict means to you, except be in these soft spaces where there is no judgment.
Fantastic. Yeah, that's very vital. Now I'm losing my comments here. What's Divina? Let's see. We don't have sacred wells. Yes, you do, surprisingly. This is one of the things visiting Clara will recognize this. When we did tours of the US, we didn't just go by airplane. We drove, and it meant we camped in places and on farms and go wandering around and find wells, find sites, and go up to the farmer and say, "Oh, look, you've got a prayer circle, you've got a holy well." That's just the Native Americans. What's happened in the US, people, they've become disconnected. They're there all right, but they've not made them into a visit. They've not really brought them back into preservation. It's like when Sarah goes to places, a holy well is just sort of like a mud that you put your boot into, and all of a sudden the locals have come up with story. When I was a child who did that and the other. Next thing we know, the communities come in, they've got the well back. And this is what needs to happen in the US. You will find you've got lots of wells.
I came across the website, findaspring.com.
That's the
and
one.
It's got wells all over the US that you can go and have a look at. And they do worldwide. They've only got a splattering of what we've got here in Ireland, but that's okay. You have to come and visit to see the magic here. Do you know?
But you're in the Carolinas, aren't you there, Davina, North Carolina? Loads and loads of spring wells there. It's almost like you could throw a stone between one spring well and the next. So it's worth looking into and getting people interested, reflect on what's done in Ireland. And you probably got some interest in it as well. You're in Virginia.
We do have hot springs here in Ireland. We have 39 hot springs in Ireland.
That's the point. We got
now
the hot springs
tepid.
Too.
They're not exactly hot, but you can see one out in Leixlip, right between the hospital and the Lewis stop. The water is this kind of murky blue. I wouldn't necessarily be getting into it due to its location. People might look at you a bit funny, but
right, now I'll move on because I want to get to this next video before we lose you all. But last Sunday I was talking about women and water and how this applies to the whole world. It's not just an Irish thing. And it's tradition for women to collect water from wells, provide water, protect water. But going back to the imagery of the hazel goddess coming out of the sea and placing her 3 root legs into the wells, it may be hard to imagine men of water, but there are stories of John the Baptist. There's gods like Poseidon, Neptune, and of course we have the wonderful Gary Brannigan, the founder of ancient holy wells of Ireland. But on top of that, and unfortunately I couldn't do it this year, where I did the session of the Green Man, and the Ashlings, I would have come up a bit about Mary and the relationship of how the word Mary, the name Mary, came from Mare, which we know as sea, but the word is actually for any vast amount of water. So Mary is very symbolic. But I'll come back to that next year when I do Ashlings and Green Man again. But as I've shared many times, the traditions of women looking into wells, looking for the visions, and the practice is not only seeking visions of the mate for the Beldener, that I and others, we may jest about it, but it's for visions of prophecy, for questions about families such as health, illness, and harvest. And I tend to call this the prophecy of the present. And staring into the well is a form of divination. As we know, Nostradamus, he looked into a bowl of water for prophecies. That's a lovely folklore. So why do I keep referring to hazel when I talk about water and tell stories about water? The hazel tree around the world, much more than the hawthorn tree, has roots, they say, from which the little people emerge through the water and through the hazel trees. And these little people, they could be, people call them dyads, the nymphs, and in Ireland we've got the Sidhe, the fae, the fairies. And to me, I translate the staring into the water as calling of these little people that we may alternatively translate into being our guiding spirits, our angels, and even the hand of the Lord for the Christian people. But it's an important practice of the tradition that I always repeat, is that the contemplation in the water should always follow a question. But that whole experience can be shattered if we're looking into that pool and then expecting an answer. Or even because I think we have expectations when we're looking for an answer. We may frame what we allow to respond from the pool. And I think framing around our expectations of an answer, that can be a huge problem. So in short, I recommend ask the question at the pool, make the prayer. You probably use other words for that, your intent, but don't go there seeking for answers.
Or they could just learn to listen, because the
That's
answers
it.
are always there. The water remembers everything that it's ever touched.
Exactly.
It has the answer to absolutely everything. They say water is older than the world itself. So anybody who's ever touched it, anybody who's ever been around a world space, that water has imprinted with those messages. So you can actually achieve all the answers, including the future, I believe. Sorry, John.
Oh no, that was perfect. That was the most perfect interlude. Thank you so much for that. Putting that into the word. I suppose I have this thing about, there's no such thing as answers. I think it was Robin Williamson who really sort of confirmed that with me. His interpretation of an answer is that it's the doorway to another 1,000 questions.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, but there's answers to them all. So
yeah, I suppose I don't believe in answers. I believe in living with the questions, because that's what creates the wonder and manifests the things.
It's the unfolding, you know what I mean? The non-judgment, that if you answer a question, ask a question, that you're going to get a certain answer.
Yeah.
It's an unfolding. And the more you actively participate with the water, in my experience, the more the water's inclined to talk to you. If you just go and stare at it and ask questions and then walk away before it gives it a chance, it causes offense, essentially, and it's not going to talk to you the next time. So just take time with these spaces. I see you have on these your screen to enjoy the visions. Yeah,
enjoy the vision from the well, contemplate, and let the well itself guide you. Just realize that's actually the Chalice Well garden behind. I'm going to talk about gardens and wells perhaps as the last finishing here, but I'm going to change the background screen for a little bit.
Well, funny you say that. We have great plans to be able to put gardens for food sovereignty at all the wells, because not only should you be able to get your water, you should be able to get a couple of vegetables or herbs.
Exactly. That's one of the things.
So we're hoping to inspire people this year to start putting the gardens, the community gardens, down at the wells.
That's fantastic, because that's going to bring us on to the next video, actually. There we go. We'll bring Shannon into it.
Oh.
The background.
Shannon at Bridget's well. When I was walking, Mahu Shannon, she got in like a Trojan. It was freezing, it was sour, no less, and it was so cold, and she stripped down and was such joy clean that water. Oh my God, between her and Karen, I was just applauding from the side.
That's brilliant. Anyway, our next guest was going to be Susan Samuel. I think she's watching still. I hope she is. But she sent me a beautiful video of work they're doing. And it's actually Hamston's well. It's in the Wirral. And here's a sign. I'll let you read this for a while. It's in the entrance. And it really tells you more than I can do for an introduction. And as an Iron Age origin. And
shall I read it?
Or
can people read
it?
This
the well, or no, you read it. You're the guest.
Okay, Hamston's well. This well or spring possibly served Iron Age settlements at Burton Point and the Anglo-Saxon settlement of Burton about 900 AD. The earliest known written records were dated 1602 and 1603 in the Manor Court book where it is referred to as St. Patrick's Well. Located on one side of Conigrieve, bounded by a mill, Denna Lane and the shore. There are frequent references in the records of the Manor Court concerning its upkeep. The constables of Burton were charged with cleaning the well each year, and all able-bodied men of Burton were required to help under pain of a fine of 6pence. I think we should bring that back. The court also passed bylaws raising funds for its maintenance from the villagers and prohibiting washing clothes at the well or turning water out of its course. I agree with that too. By the 19th century, it had become known as Hamston's Well, and after a family who had lived in Burton since the 16th century. Thanks, John. I enjoyed that.
That's incredible. Yeah, read it very nicely. That's beautiful. What I was saying, Susan, she sent me this video, and Sarah was saying about how she was certainly ahead of me a bit about community gardens. This actually well started as a community garden.
No way.
And the video, you can see that it's a beautiful well. They were using it as a fundraiser to try and get some funds to bring the well back because it was just a pile of mud. But before they got the well going, it was a community garden and a little woodland. So on the video, it's very much the community garden and woodland. And I say, where's the well? Where's the well? So Susan sent me some photos of the actual well, so you know what's there. Look at that. It's a big one. It's always,
wow.
It reminds me a bit of the Belcoo one a bit, and also the one in Roscommon, the Ogulars Well in a way. But this is what happened. A lot of the English wells are huge because everybody would come, the animals, everything for their water supply on their travels. So here's a few more pictures as well.
Oh, wow.
That's it. It's very much, and they've put in seats that you got an overview down into the.
I think it's very important for people to be able to find reasons to be at these spaces, whether it be a garden or a seat or, because there's an awkwardness that people feel and not quite knowing how long they're allowed to stay there, as long as you want.
Yes.
And having a garden gives you a reason to be there long as you want and as long as you need to be. And these visions do take time to unfold, don't they?
They do. And there's a sort of essence of trust. And I think if you've got a garden, you've got the trees, people connect with that. And it just adds more trust to the area. I love this photograph because at the forefront here, you see like a little well, which is what often we're familiar with in Ireland. And that leads down into the bigger well where the animals, perhaps, and the horses. When
it would have struck me as something to bathe in, wouldn't
That's
it?
True,
as well,
yeah.
You know what I mean? That you drink out of the small well and then you go and bathe in the larger one.
Exactly. That's a multi-purpose, and this is a close-up of that.
Look. And she lovely.
Yeah. I think that's Susan's dog. I think that's.
I was talking about the well, not the dog, but the dog's nice too.
All right. Anyway, I think I've covered hers of that.
What a tree.
And so I think I really need to find the video. This is the Hamston's Well video, and give you a few minutes to contemplate this. So this is Burton's Well.
The bluebell wood.
Are we done?
Listen what you hear. Above, the chattering bird song of the greenfinch and starling. But below, listen closely. A murmuring, bubbling, tinkering of water, emerging from the hidden depths of Mother Earth, flowing through a sandstone canal of birth, into a juvenile life of the well. Then, when at full height, cascading into the stream of adventure, passing through fields and woods and stone, towards the mighty Dee, carrying you forward and back through time. Listen, time is passing. Back through cobblestone, back through horse-trod lanes, and barreled carts, back to when wandering tribes first came to Burton's shores. Here with fertile lands and plentiful rivers they found a gift from Mother Earth. Pure, clean, fresh. Here in this crucible, air and fire meet earth and water, and new life is born.
Hamston's Well Community Garden is located in an amphitheatre-shaped grove on Station Road, which leads from Burton Village to the marshes by the Dee estuary. Historically, the well was the main source of water for the village, and in earlier times it's thought that the spring provided fresh water for the Iron Age fort at Burton Point. Today, Station Road is on a popular walking route for local people and visitors, providing another point of interest on a route linking Burton Point, the marshes, Burton...
Oh, John, what did I do?
Nothing. It's just that's the other head thing.
Oh,
hello. We're back on.
I
Sorry, we were sort of chatting away with the video.
It.
That's brilliant. Because yes, I haven't been to comments for a bit here. Divina springs around the Allegheny Mountains. People here don't see them as holy springs. Well, I suppose what it is, there wasn't the medieval.
Association.
There wasn't the medieval culture, the scribal. There were the scribes in that time. In fact, scribing hadn't arrived in the US. So by the time there was scribing in the US, there was a whole different Christian approach, and the wells wouldn't have been highly regarded. So
but it doesn't make them any less holy.
It doesn't, because that's what it is.
The molecular structure of the well. These are called artesian wells. So like when John's been touching on it, water goes into an incubatory state where it begins to absorb all the minerals within it. When it absorbed all the minerals, it changes from a positive state into a negative state, which allows it to burst through the ground. Just because there's a saint on them doesn't mean that they're not perceived as holy. I guarantee your grandmother still went up and spoke to those wells when they collected those water and said their prayers. I was cleaning a well over by Virginia one time, and this woman comes down and she shouts at me something awful because I had had a fire. Now the fire was raised in off the ground, but we were in a woodland, and she thought I was just someone taking the mick. And I listened to her shouting and then asked her politely, would she stop shouting at me that I had just spent 3 hours inside the well and it was cold enough that I needed the fire to keep me warm. And I had mentioned something about a holy well, and after she had taken a walk inside the woods, she comes back and she says to me, what makes it holy? I says, by Jesus, I can hear the echoes of your prayers for all the years that you put into it. And I think this is water sources. All water is holy on some level or another, because if it's not your prayers, it's somebody else's prayers in it. And the Russian Orthodox Church, didn't they do experiments with bringing water in from Russia into the church? And I mean, you can imagine all the different nasties that were inside that water. But by the end of the praying of the holy day that they did, they retested that water, and that water was pure. These places were used as places of prayer, not only just to clean ourselves, but also to help clean the water. And that's Masaru Emoto's sort of work as well about the power of prayer.
Definitely. And also, I suppose in the US, don't even think about calling them holy wells. When I lived and worked in Utah, the natives there still revered the wells, and even local people did, because of the chelating. And that's what I learned about the chelating, because I was working on that a bit. But they still regard the wells as being very sacred, and especially because of the mixed minerals around Utah. I mean, if you got copper in the well, it was strong copper. And if you got tin, it was strong tin. And there was different applications with that, and boy, did they taste bitter, but they all have their medical purposes. So yes, I suppose the thing is forget the concept of the holy well. Just think of each one as a sacred gift that's been used as that gift ever since there's been humans. So thanks, Vina, for that. And I'm sure you're going to be looking at springs in a very different way, and maybe show other people, because you're very wise to this sort of thing, to show other people about the springs, and perhaps use some of the folklore that you picked up in Scotland and Ireland as a way of explaining. And then someone's going to come back to you with a local story from where you're actually saying that, and then it all builds up the awareness and the connection again, and people will get excited, I'm absolutely sure. Anyway, I'd like to briefly talk about, we were talking about community gardens, gardening around the well. You know, the idea of the well, not just the water, just bring the whole larder around, whole natural larder. You've got a lot of wells. I know the one I was showing there that attract as well at Monastery. There's herbs there. A lot of the wells, they have herbs growing. But it's great to have your vegetables growing there and make that community garden and expand out of that, because you've got, making a lovely barrier between the agricultural land and the sacred well. You're protecting it by looking after and having care of that land around it. So plants, herbs, even gardens by wells.
And mushrooms. Mushrooms are very important.
Oh, mushrooms as well, yeah.
Do you know, and now make sure you don't introduce the wrong mushrooms into the wrong area. Please do your research. But mushrooms have this amazing power of being able to keep pesticides. This is where the fairy ring mushrooms came out. So they can actually protect the water, but they absorb all of the nasties that could actually be filtering into the water. So mushroom farms.
Brilliant. Yes. Oh, yeah. Very important. That's lovely. Thanks for bringing that one up. And I suppose the other thought I had on this, how much nicer it is to bring in life around the well, whether it's community garden, whether it's the trees and the mushrooms as well. And anything that finds its way there, that you put it there, you know, becomes a sharing place. How much nicer that is than having Merriam figures. And also, in some ways, although it is quite essential for people with their blessings, in the way that people approach these rag trees, you know, especially when they put CD discs on them and plastic pearls and stuff that's not going to go back to nature, you know, keeping it to nature. So, whereas you've got these cold Merriam figures of stone. And that's where I think the disconnection comes, is that it's lovely to come to the well and you've got all the living trees and the plants there instead of stones.
But the plants can also have a great way of being able to clean the water.
And that too, yes.
And add to the mineral compositions of it. So you're increasing the health for sure, aren't you?
Yeah.
But you were talking about these stone statues. I had to stop you because I've seen some of the most beautiful stone statues on this island. And I might not be Catholic, but by Jesus, I can appreciate a good stone mason. Some of them are absolutely gorgeous, John.
Yes. As I worked on cleaning those up before, I can agree with you, but I think in some situations, I suppose I've become a bit anti-statues when I've seen them on a manicured lawn. And sometimes, and there's no one too far away from here, that manicured lawn gets a good dose of its Roundup on it as well.
Well, hopefully we don't see too much.
No,
of that
you won't see that
on.
to the wells
Integration
anyway.
Between all faiths, because these are spaces that are meant for everybody. It's the thing that connects us. We all need water, whether we be plants, humans, or animals.
Yes. So, as I say, with that video we were showing, it's lovely that started as a community garden when it was being revived. The lovely thing, I think, with all of these things, and as Sarah has experienced and talked about, is people show up as a group. It's a bunch of people caring. And that is therapeutic in itself, as well as great fun. It's amazing the social healing that comes into that as well. And
well, do you know what the key is? People don't just appear out of thin air, John.
Yes.
They have to be invited. And quite often people do want to participate but don't want to impose. So it's always good that when you're at a well and you're doing a bit of cleaning, not to have any attachment to the story that anybody's going to show up, because quite often you were there by yourself doing the good work. And that's okay too. But to remember who's in the area and ask them, do they want to come out and share a cup of tea? Do they want to bring a few sandwiches? Have they got a couple of extra plants that they wouldn't mind planting in? And this is how community forms. Invite people in and around. And quite often they come into this space and they go, oh, this is lovely. And they're quite enchanted to actually start participating in it. And I think that's where the success is just to remember that these are meant to be community spaces. And everybody should be welcome without any sort of form of aggression or, belief systems getting in the way.
Yeah. Now, one that I was impressed with, Claire and I was there a few years ago, and the time I was there previously, I think it must have been 1969, 1970, the Chalice Well in Glastonbury. I haven't got any old pictures. There's an old one there. But when I went there in the 60s, it was a little footpath up to it, and there was brambles, it was wilderness. Certainly We Are the Ark. Mary Reynolds would have absolutely loved to see that. But this is where I suppose people have got together. It's a big commercial, but it is a community well as well. And that's why you had the background of the Chalice Well before. There we go. Mm-hmm. And that's just part of the gardens that they built around it. I was quite shocked when I saw this because I was remembering the little path I went along and with all the brambles and wildflowers. And there you go. That's the well. Even that lid's been cleaned up.
Look at you.
I was quite shocked because that was just covered in algae and all the rest of it at the time I'd been there before. But it's a huge visitors thing now. But it just shows a lot of people, they're wandering around the gardens and enjoying the peace of that. And they are actually around the well. And then even Ireland's got it. This, and Gary will be familiar with this one in Raheny. There's St. Anne's. So that's
that one's gone now.
Has it gone?
Well, the well's still there, but the water's well gone.
Ah.
But it is beautiful out there.
It is, yeah.
St. Anne's, isn't it?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Now, as I say, next there's a venue change coming up. As I was saying, next week is going to be the last here from this studio and going into more sound internet at the Hive in Carrick-on-Shannon. But next week, I'd like to continue this. It's a 4-week series called Summer Blooming. And it's going to be our Garden Sanctuaries is the first episode. That's the title. So let's start with a continuation. As I say, that's why I showed the St. Anne's there. And let's talk about the gardens around the wells. We'll start off with that as Garden Sanctuaries actually being the gardens that are around wells. So if you've got any stories of that as your local well-got gardens, or is this inspired you to even start to get people locally around you to start getting herbs and plants, or even space for the beautiful wildflowers, whichever way it takes you? How is your garden sanctuary also a well sanctuary? Let's see if there's anybody who comes up with that. And we'll start off with that in next week. Even though it's a new series, I think that'll be a beautiful transition.
Anybody is doing any active participation with their wells, whether it be cleaning or planting gardens, please do share and document on All Is Well. We would love to see it. And I think the more people that get permission to do these things, the better. We all inspire each other, don't we, John?
Certainly. It's been fantastic. Sorry Bridget didn't come, Bridget O'Brien.
I think reception in the Shannon pot is a bit dodgy, really.
We checked it up, actually. They've improved it over the years.
Oh.
It's actually got a fairly strong 4G there.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I do paperwork up there, but
yeah, it's only happened recently that they've strengthened it up. But of course, you're near the border and that can get in the way as well. So let's check your comments here.
And we're stretching on for time anyhow.
Oh, yeah.
All these good people.
It is. They would have stretched it. We're sort of love the idea of creating gardens. We're going funny again. I think that was here. Love the idea. Yes, definitely. Thanks to Veen and Claire here. My ethic when entering a church or well here, she's in Thailand, the temple, the overwhelming thing is the immense respect for their ancient devotion and the soul cry. And yes, they're where Claire is at the moment, their approach to water is quite phenomenal. And then she's continuing with that. Good on you, Sarah. Whirlwind, and you fly by the nets of tardy official bodies. Absolutely brilliant.
Let's hope we keep doing the salmon thing up the river.
That's brilliant. And that's one, because where Claire is at the moment, be very late at night, where she's watching this as well. So, as I mentioned at the start of these sessions, folklore sessions, nature folklore sessions, made possible by the support of our subscribers through Patreon and the donations through Buy Me a Coffee and PayPal. So this is where I throw this up. That's the Buy Me a Coffee. And that seems to have got popular because you don't have to go through PayPal. You can just use your card on that. So thank you very much, because it helps me pay my monthly subscriptions and other services, and the Hive studio rentals coming up as well. And all this makes this show possible. So even €1, £1, or $1 a month, it helps such a lot. Fantastic. Now, coming up 5th of June, as I was saying, the start of a 4-week, very relaxed series, the summer blooming. Blooming summer. No, we can't say that. It's the summer blooming anyway. And this is, I love this because it's like wildflowers, but it's an actual garden. That was actually a bloom.
Wow.
That was a bloom garden. It was a beautiful one where actually it's a social farm in Leitrim up near the organic centre.
Oh, yeah.
And they actually recreated by taking the turfs, putting it in the bloom garden, having it as the bloom exhibition. And there was actually a statue of a man in concrete, with a mental disability and despondency, just nothing around him, no life. And then the comparison being out in the life in the garden. And this is what the work they do, is they encourage the people, instead of being despondent and just in their melancholy, get out and connect with all this. So again, we're talking eccentrics here, but then they took the turfs and took it back up to Leitrim and put them back again. Yeah. Wow. So anyway, that was the story for the cover. That's next week. But if we can start off with something similar like this, your experiences around wells, around water as a boundary between the farms and water as well. Let's talk about that one as well. And
I want to come on next week now, John.
Anyway, we will have a full transition. The 12th is when I'm actually going to be moving in the studio. That's going to be very open-ended. I'm going to call this the Midsummer Gathering, though it is the 12th and very early. But I don't know what's going to happen. Because be moving in, I don't know how it's going to operate. But bring your poems in. I'll be talking about it the week beforehand. See what guests and contributions we can have. And then the fourth one, the 19th, and I normally would have had this on the 12th, is the sound bathing. Anybody there know anybody who does the sound bathing? All my favorite sound bathing practitioners are fully booked all through June. They got very busy Junes coming up. So anyway, we'll have it by hook or by crook, where it's the contribution of sound. Even you do a bit of sound around.
I do sound therapy as well. I can recommend plenty of people to you, John.
So there we go. Okay, Sarah's going to look after the sound bathing. So, oh, that's brilliant. I'm really off the hook here. That's actually really brilliant. And we got one more, and it's rewilding. It's the last one in the series. That's on the 26th. We'll definitely be about rewilding ourselves, and that was popular when I did that last year. So it's not about just rewilding gardenings, but how can what you do around you is an expression of your own rewilding. So that's what's coming up as well. So any comments? Any more comments from me before we close up? We're well over an hour and a half this time. It's been lovely doing this. Lovely having Sarah really help me out coming up with stuff when I started babbling, and she's come out with some pure poetry, as you've seen, and a pure story. Oh, absolute bliss for me having her as a guest today. So thank you so much,
John,
Sarah,
thanks for having me.
Making this an absolutely fabulous show. So thanks very much, Gary, who was on earlier before he went off into the sun with his family. Very kind of him to contribute and getting him and Sarah together on Wells as well. Susan Samuel, I hope you're feeling a lot better. Thanks very much for the video and the pictures of your beautiful Community Well project over there. Oh, we were talking about gardens, and I got some beautiful flower poems by Eileen Monaghan. And talking about applying to your gardens, this is a sort of transition. 2 more flowers.
The bluebell wood. The bluebell wood always stood strong and old, a secret hold in local lore, of earthy floor covered in hue of cobalt blue during lovely May. Heavenly scent, intoxicating scent, many hours we gathered flowers, merry bands with sticky hands, tying a string as we did sing the lovely month of May. Sunlight rays and leafy shade, spotted path make as we snake along grassy path, chat and laugh, wending our way on a happy day in lovely May. Greater stitchwort, snow-white flower shaped like a star, innocent and beautiful you are. You scramble over bank and briar, spreading like wildfire, flowering from April till June has passed, with brittle stem and leaves like grass. Your popping seeds far off are mass, like a firework display that is first class. People say you help pain in the side of those who take too fast a stride. Mother Nature must swell with pride, seeing you dressed like a radiant bride.
Well, thanks very much, Eileen. She mentioned Eileen Moynihan. She mentioned the greater stitchwort, in case you didn't know what it is. There you are. There's a picture of the greater stitchwort. So thanks very much, Eileen, as well for that. We got the last 2 flower poems in. Beautifully done. If you're watching this broadcast later as an archive video, keep your comments going, because I still answer from time to time. You get the bell below the YouTube, and if you subscribe to that, you get information of what's coming up on the next Sunday as well. And there seems to be a last comment or 2. And Gary's still here. Thank you so much. And Solon Fontaine, a new viewer as far as I know. Thank you. Brilliant session. Look forward to tuning in again next week. In Suffolk, UK, there are so few wells left, mainly dried up due to agricultural extraction. See what you can do. There's one guest that we got here, that we have here, that's not far away from you, and he does work on wells, and it's annoying. It's gone brain fog, I forget his name. He comes on with poems quite a bit. I keep thinking Gary. It's not Gary. I'll think of it and I'll put it in the notes as well. But yes, be wonderful to revive those Suffolk wells, because I know they're doing some in Norfolk as well, and in Suffolk. Oh, the man lives in Ipswich, and I'm trying to think of his name. He's actually from Ireland, Rusborough, and not Rusborough. A little town by Loch Ree. I'll think of it. Anyway, I'll put it in the comments later. So that's fabulous. It just leaves me. Thank you again for Sarah for being here. It's been fabulous being with you, being with Sarah, and presenting about a favourite subject with the wells. It's been fabulous. So enjoy a safe week full of your wonder and inspiration enchantments. That's all I think we've got, though. That's fair to you. So until next week, play well. Have a beautiful week, especially the sunny day today. Thank you so much. Thank you. Bye.
Good job, John.
Uh,
Are we still on?
no.
No.